Hey guys, Trevor McGrath back again. In this video, we'll be discussing the 7 brainwaves. So first off, what is a brainwave? Brainwaves are essentially 7 different stations. If you were to look at your mind as a television, there's essentially 7 different stations that you can tune to, 7 different degrees of consciousness, you could say. Now, these 7 different degrees of consciousness or stations are determined by the frequency at which your neurons are firing, be it front to back, left to right, or in different specific parts of your brain. You may have seen what is called EEG testing, where they strap the cap to your head and they put the electrodes on your head and they measure these waves. Those waves are brain waves. So these waves can be brought about or facilitated through different practices, be it meditation, especially certain breathing techniques. And one of the most direct ways that you can impact or affect these brainwaves or bring them about is through what is called binaural beats, which is a big study that essentially the Monroe Institute came out and rediscovered in modern times, but this is a much more ancient knowledge that they've known about since the beginning of man. So there are 7 different brain waves: epsilon, delta, theta, alpha, beta, and lambda. We'll take these in order from the lowest brainwave to the highest brainwave. So first we'll start with epsilon. Now epsilon waves range anywhere from 0.5 hertz and below. These are the brain waves that yogis enter when they enter the state of suspended animation, right? These are brain waves to where essentially if you were centered in the epsilon brainwave, you would be in a conscious coma, so to speak. You would be aware while your body and mind are completely asleep. You're just a point of consciousness. And this is almost a paradoxical state to where you people have reported, going through surgery or getting, maybe hit by a car, and they're able to see their body from above, and this is this transcendental space where we call epsilon. Now, there's really not much known about epsilon other through just subjective experience, people who have gone into this state during meditation. But one thing I will say about epsilon is that it's very key in the ancient rituals and the ancient initiations that have been passed down through the Nazarenes, the Essenes, the Templars, the Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and so on, in regards to what they call the resurrection ceremony, right? Where you go into your deepest state of conscious death to experience the highest state of conscious awakening. Next, we have the delta brainwave. So the delta brainwave is what we're in when we're in a deep sleep. Now, this is a deep, dreamless sleep. When you're in this delta wave, you are not having any dreams, at least nothing that you're going to recollect, no matter how experienced of a dreamer you might be. But through meditation, you can get down and get into the delta brainwave as well. But by default, we're essentially usually not aware of this brainwave, and it is, as I mentioned, dreamless, the dreamless state. No real astral motion is going on here. And for this very reason, it is actually the state where the body can physically regenerate, right? This is the brainwave where your production of HGH, human growth hormone, and serotonin are both generating and reproducing. Now, this state can be correlated with the parasympathetic nervous system's connection to the reptilian brain, right? So the reptilian brain has everything to do with our unconscious, right? This is the unconscious realm. So it has everything to do with our unconscious processes of our body, be it blood pressure, heart rate, stuff that you really can't consciously control. And I mean, thank God. Imagine if you had to consciously control your blood pressure throughout the day while multitasking other things, or any of these unconscious processes of the body. It's best that they're unconscious because they're on autopilot, right? They're droning on, and it's the body's innate intelligence that is basically performing these tasks instead of you from your conscious human will. Delta waves range from generally 0.5 hertz up to 4 hertz. So in this realm, this is where you're centered mainly in delta. And before I move on too far, you can associate with the chakras with these brain waves. So the one I previously mentioned, epsilon, that can be seen as the root chakra functions in your brain, right? Delta, which is another word for a body of water, can be seen as the sacral chakra processes. And as we know, the element water is actually associated with the sacral chakra. So now this next brainwave is full of depth. It's the theta brainwave. We could correlate this one with the solar plexus chakra, moving up the steps or the ladder of 7. Now the theta brainwave is it's a very fascinating brainwave in the sense that it has everything to do with the subconscious mind. This is where you're in the twilight state. That space right when you're about to drift off to sleep, right? And usually when we fall asleep and we have these deep, vivid dreams or lucid dreams or astral projection experiences, this is the realm where that happens, right? This is also the realm where hypnosis can take place, correlating with the idea that, it's reaching into your subconscious mind, right? It's putting something into your mind, the dimension of your mind where things are on autopilot. They're on this loop, right? And the subconscious, or the theta brainwave state, is where our repressed memories and even traumas are stored and can actually be brought to the surface, seen and reconciled. So when we start becoming conscious of theta, or when we meditate deep enough to where we stay awake while we're still in theta, we can pull up those traumas in a gentle way to where we aren't necessarily forcing them up and popping our cork, so to speak, and re-traumatizing ourselves, and to where we can actually reconcile these traumas once and for all. In the theta brainwave state, this is where we produce the neurotransmitter known as GABA. Now, GABA is the chief initiator to the parasympathetic nervous system, along with oxytocin. GABA is a relaxatory neurotransmitter which will spark all the hormones that come to play with that. Oxytocin, which is the love hormone, vasopressin, which is the trust hormone. During pregnancy and a little bit afterwards, the mother will actually produce an extra abundance of vasopressin and prolactin for this very reason. And it mainly channels through the breast milk. So when the child is feeding from the mother, it's actually getting an abundance of vasopressin, which is the trust hormone, creating a bond between the mother and the child. Now, within, we all are supposed to be producing these hormones anyways to have a general sense of trust in the process and creation and the universe, however you want to put it. And this, once again, as mentioned, puts us in the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, if you're not familiar with the different modes of the nervous system, the main way you could see it is there's two main functions. Parasympathetic is when we're in this rest, regenerate, and digest state, where the body is actually healing itself in all the ways it knows how to. It's a receptive state, right? And the sympathetic nervous system is the more stimulated state. It could range anywhere from being excited and physically active to being in a state of full-blown anxiety, fight or flight, and panic, or to extreme degrees, experiencing PTSD. Theta is in the brain correlated with the mammalian brain. So this is the center part of your brain, mainly storing the hippocampus, which stores our memories, our deep-seated memories. The amygdala, which has everything to do with sensory processing from the outside world, and converting those senses internally to create certain hormones to where we react appropriately, you could say. And the mammalian brain also incorporates the pituitary gland, which takes signals from the hypothalamus and hormones and actually injects it into the bloodstream. So now on to the alpha brainwave. This is what you could see as the 0 point, or the center brainwave, correlating with the heart chakra. The alpha brainwave is where you're in this in-between state where you're awake and aware, yet you're relaxed. So this is the state that most people are in when they're in a general state of mid-grade meditation. Alpha is the bridge between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So this right here is where the subconscious actually bridges into the awareness, to where we start seeing more of what's below the surface. And as some say, the subconscious really does steer 90% of our reality. What's ticking away at the depths of our mind is really what's steering us. So to touch on theta real quick, again, back to theta, when you're a child, ages 1 through about 6 or 7, and your formative years, you're in a constant state of theta. And some could say infants are in a constant state of delta, right? Where they're in this regeneration, still kind of womb stage. But young children are mainly in the stage of theta, to where they can retain stuff in such a way that they can, they don't have to relearn everything. They don't have to relearn to brush their teeth every day. They start memorizing and retaining all the base level functions. But this also goes hand in hand with how trauma in those formative years can store in the deepest reaches of our subconscious mind. So our deepest traumas are usually within the age range of 1 through 7 years old. But back to alpha. Alpha is this in-between state where we can start bridging that subconscious mind into the conscious mind and become aware of what you could call your shadow, right? Where your shadow starts coming to the surface, to where you can spot and see, oh, okay, I'm this way because this happened at this age, and now I can rewrite my program, or rewire, or rewrite my neuroplasticity, you could even say. The neurotransmitter that associates with the alpha brainwave is acetylcholine. Now, much could be said about acetylcholine, but the most basic way to put it is that it is a bridge between the excitatory and the relaxatory hormones, right? So once again, this ties in with the heart chakra being the bridge between the upper and the lower 3 chakras, and alpha being the bridge between the upper 3 and the lower 3 brainwaves. So now the 5th brainwave, beta. Beta, it has a certain nuance to it, you could say. You could correlate it with the 5th chakra, the throat chakra. So now in the lower stages of beta, we are basically focused and can retain information. You're ideally in beta when you're engaging in conversation or you're taking a test, right? It's more the left brain aspect of the mind. And this is where you start getting into the sympathetic, right? The stimulated state of being. Now, high beta is where you start getting into, you start tilting into more of anxiety and panic, right? So you could go from low beta where you're taking a test to high beta where all of a sudden, your biggest fear is confronting you and your whole body's creating the hormones and reacting accordingly to prep you for your survival. Beta can be seen correlating in the brain with the sympathetic connections to the reptilian brain, right? So the fear, the sheer survival, as mentioned, and the neurotransmitter that correlates with beta is dopamine, right? So it's an excitatory neurotransmitter where you end up generally, getting exhilarated by something, and in some cases to the point where you want more, and in extreme cases to the point of addiction, right? It's that short-term gratification type of stimulus. And in the brain, this can also correlate with the general neocortex, right? We have 3 layers. So, your reptilian brainstem, your mammalian midbrain, and the neocortex, or the part that goes over the top of the whole brain. So now on to the 6th chakra, or the gamma brainwave. Now in gamma, every part of the brain is in communication with every other part of the brain, and this creates full sensory integration, right? This is where epiphanies come, the aha moments come, the clarity comes. In gamma, this has a lot to do also with DMT production. So as you could see, it correlates with the 6th chakra, the aha moment, the epiphany, right? Now in Latin, it's interesting because the name for the pineal gland is epiphysis cerebri. So we see right there that it is called the gland of the epiphany, and it sits right there at the 6th chakra, or the 6th heaven, right? The 6th brainwave. Another interesting factor about gamma is that when we reach this state, and specifically 40 hertz, right? 40 hertz is the sweet spot of gamma, where when we're resonating in this state, our body's optimally pumping the cerebral spinal fluid, which, as in some schools of thought, is seen as the actual anointing, or the Christos, throughout the body. MIT has actually done studies about 40 hertz, where they found that 40 hertz light flickers or 40 hertz brainwave entrainment, either or, can actually clear amyloid plaques from the brain, causing an incredible effect on healing Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So gamma has a very interesting association with theta. It can actually embed upon theta waves and ride on those waves. So when you start integrating gamma waves and theta waves together, you can stay awake while you're in theta. And this is where a lot of your clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairgestament, clairsentient abilities come in. Telepathic, psychic abilities start to come back online. And this state is a state that was practiced as an initiation into the priory of Sion, right? Their members would know how to achieve this in-between integrated state where they were in both gamma and theta at the same time. And then, last but not least, the 7th brainwave, you have lambda, the crown chakra, right? And this kind of brings it full circle, really, because every definition of lambda is the exact same definition as the first brainwave, which is epsilon. So you take the flight full circle, right? You come all the way back to this state where you're completely transcended space-time. You're above and beyond the mind. You're overseeing it all, yet you're seeing nothing at all. It's the ultimate paradox, right? So once again, lambda, suspended animation, conscious coma type of effect, and back to the idea that this was a facilitator of what the embodiment practice of the resurrection um, ceremony or the resurrection initiation that had been passed down through the mystery schools centered around. And just to recap, the specific brainwave frequencies for each one. Epsilon is 0.5 hertz and anywhere below. Delta is 0.5 hertz to 4 hertz. Theta is 4 hertz up to 8 hertz. Alpha is 8 hertz up to 12 hertz. Beta is 12 hertz up to 30 hertz. And gamma is 30 hertz up to, some say, this one varies. Some say 50 hertz, some say 100 hertz. And then you have lambda, the highest, which is 100 hertz and anywhere above.